Effective horror always draws from reality. Alfred Hitchcock's famous quote is, "A glimpse into the world proves that horror is nothing other than reality." Reality in horror has always been a key factor, at least for me, in creating the most effective horror movies. Slashers and ghost/possession movies are huge staples in the horror genre, and for general audiences, they effectively invoke enough fear to leave watchers satisfied. For others, they need more. They need realism whether they know it or not, and seeing someone as real as you fight for their life in a dramatic situation where it's not out of the realm of possibility will absolutely do the trick. There are a few movies throughout my life that have genuinely made an impact on me as far as actual fear goes. Most were, of course, from when I was younger. The It miniseries was definitely one of the first to really scar me, while the Freddy Krueger movies followed closely behind it. I was a child though, and being scared of those two wasn't out of the ordinary. They were monsters to me, and that was as scary as it could get. It isn't until you're a little older and you finally begin to understand the world a little bit more differently, you realize the real monsters aren't creatures that terrorize towns and kill you in your dreams, but instead they're strangers on the street, or worse, they're people you may know. You eventually learn about kidnappings, home invasions, child predators, and real-life murders. Suddenly those creatures you used to watch aren't so scary anymore, and eventually something else will come that truly shakes you to your core. For me, there's two movies that truly terrified me and left me feeling differently than any other horror movie had. Those movies are The Strangers and Vacancy. I won't give you full breakdowns of the movies because if you're watching this, I assume you've seen them or at least seen one of them. The Strangers, though, is a 2008 horror movie that follows a couple named Kristen and James, who have just arrived at their vacation home after leaving a wedding. Quickly, you see that they're having troubles in their relationship, and it might be beyond saving. Three masked assailants soon arrive, attempting to break in throughout the night and murder the young couple. This movie, for me, was unlike anything I had ever seen before. At this point in my life, I was so used to seeing horror movies that involved a killer of some supernatural origin like Freddy or Jason or Chucky. I could distinguish those characters from reality, and because of that, I barely felt scared watching those movies. This movie flipped the horror and made it real for me. It felt like something that could actually happen, and the horrifying thing is that it does. You always feel safe in your home as a kid, but when you learn that people can just show up and kill you when they want to, the things you fear begin to change. All of this fear is what The Stranger stirs in you, and it started from a real place, like most horror does. It unfortunately goes back to the Manson family and their brutal attacks on unsuspecting people in their homes. As you know or might not know, the Manson family was a cult formed in the late 1960s by the criminal Charles Manson. The group facilitated 9 murders over the course of one summer, with all them being home invasions. Most importantly, Manson engaged in a practice called creepy crawling, which meant that his followers would break into homes at night while residents slept, rearrange furniture, steal items, and sometimes leave bizarre messages. This was a method intended to create unease in communities and show the vulnerability of private space. These non-violent home invasions were intended as psychological warfare and always acted as a prelude to their violent murders. This tactic is exactly what you see from the intruders in this movie. Once you realize they're toying with this couple, it gets more dark and you realize how sadistic these people truly are.
Oh my God.
We gotta get out of here. Then open the door and I just want you to run, okay?
Like I said earlier, everything changes when the horror becomes real. As a kid, this movie had a chokehold on me, and I wanted to forget I ever saw it. Now, as an adult, I love the movie. I love it because of the effect it had on me. I don't ever get scared by horror movies, but I did as a kid, so those are always the ones that I hold in high regard. With that being said, the next movie that left me feeling the exact same way is Vacancy. This movie came out in 2007, so before The Strangers, and unfortunately this one left me even more scared than the last. You see, Vacancy is more dramatized than The Strangers is. By that I mean there's a lot more set pieces in this movie compared to The Strangers, which feels a bit more grounded by comparison. Don't get me wrong, I love that about Vacancy. It has scenes of characters and underground tunnels and vehicle stunts compared to The Strangers, which almost entirely takes place in a single house. The thing is though, everything done in this movie still feels real and possible. You see, this movie is about a couple named David and Amy, whose car breaks down, forcing them to stay at a motel for the night.
How can I help you folks?
They soon realize after watching one of the VHS tapes in their room that this motel is a setting for brutal murders on the occupants, as their deaths are captured on video and sold as snuff films. Like I said, this movie is a little more dramatized than the last one, but the realism is still there. Almost everyone has either passed a sketchy looking motel, or you've been forced to stay at one overnight due to unforeseen circumstances, and just hope nothing happens to you. That's where the horror comes in. You're alone, far from help, and at the mercy of your assailants. Just like in The Strangers, this couple is forced to fight off intruders who seemingly can get in whenever they want, making the horror even more intense because we know the worst is going to happen, but we're forced to wait for it. The best part of Vacancy is how it effectively builds up the tension through the snuff film scene. In The Strangers, it's a scene where the woman at the door shows up for the second time.
Tamara here?
No. No, you got the wrong house.
You sure?
It's during both of these scenes when we realize something's up, and from that moment on, the movie continues to increase the tension. This movie is fairly normal up until this scene, and the tone shifts within minutes as we start to come to the same conclusions as David. With the discovery of these tapes and the fact that they're left in the room for anyone to watch, David and Amy realize that these deranged people have already started their game the moment they step foot in the room. Both of these movies put you in the shoes of these couples, and you feel dread of impending doom as they try to navigate survival. Thankfully, Vacancy gives us smart protagonists, which is rare to see in a horror movie. The Strangers, in fact, has the opposite. But I like the change, only because truly none of us can say that we'd make the best decisions under these extreme threats, and sadly, Kristen and James aren't the most equipped to deal with this situation. I've seen a lot of people say that they don't like the characters because they think they're useless. To me, they just come across as regular scared people trying to do the best they can. Spoiler alert for the next 20 seconds. But that's why I think The Strangers feels like the more realistic of the two, and unfortunately, writing how capable your protagonists are or are not reflects what kind of ending you're gonna have, with the couple in Vacancy living at the end due to their decisions, and the couple in The Strangers eventually falling prey to their attackers. An interesting thing that couples in these movies have in common is that both of them are struggling in their relationships. It's the first thing you learn about them, and it sets up an interesting dynamic as they're forced to put aside any trivial problems they have and deal with the more serious problems in front of them. The characters in The Strangers feel like they're in a rough patch, but the love is still there. The opposite can be said for the characters in Vacancy. In the beginning of the movie, you see that they loathe each other.
Why didn't you just stay on the interstate?
Guess I just wanted to make this as miserable as possible, you know? See just how big a bitch you'd be about it.
And it feels like they're in the last days of their relationship. This can be said for both movies, but it's not until the invitation of death arrives that they're both forced to actively communicate, which eventually mends their broken relationship and rekindles their love in a sweet but morbid way. It just gives you something else to root for alongside their survival. It's personally more effective in Vacancy because the movie focuses heavily on the couple rather than the killers. The Strangers make the murderers center stage characters just as much as it does the couple, and we see that more than ever with the sequel movies from the past few years. I love both directions for each movie, and I think they're both effective, enjoyable, and realistic. That's just the basis for this whole video. The realism these movies have personally made for an actual horror movie, at least at the time I watched them. Nowadays, I fear home invasion and mass murders less than I did as a child, but there's no doubt that these Manson-style break-ins with masked assailants or murders recorded and sold as snuff films actually happen in real life. That's the realistic aspect that's more terrifying than a possessed home or a clown in the sewer. These are the types of films that stick with you for different reasons and force you to always make sure every door and window is locked at night. A movie that changes how you see the world and makes you scared in everyday life is true horror at its finest, and that's what both of these movies do for me. I hope you've seen both of them, and if you haven't, I don't know why you're still here, but I appreciate it, and I hope you watch them at some point. Thank you for making it this far, and yeah, stick around for more videos, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.